The Mongol Empire did not just conquer the medieval world, it rewired it. At its height, it became the largest contiguous land empire in history. From East Asia to Eastern Europe, its reach was enormous. But this story is not only about conquest. It is also about state building. It is also about trade. It is also about terror, administration, and fragmentation. To understand the empire, start before the empire existed. The eastern steppe was not empty. It was politically fractured. Clans, confederations, alliances, and raids shaped survival. In that world, loyalty shifted quickly. Violence was common. Security was fragile. Into that world came Temujin. He would later be known as Genghis Khan. His early life was harsh. After his father died, family protection collapsed. His household fell into insecurity and abandonment. That matters because Mongol unity did not rise from comfort. It rose from instability. Temujin learned that survival required alliances, strategy, and force. He built support through personal charisma. He built support through revenge politics. He built support by pulling talent across tribal lines. That last part was important. He did not rely only on old noble birth. He valued usefulness. He valued loyalty. He valued military skill. In 1206, a Kurultai changed everything. At that assembly, Temujin was recognized as Genghis Khan. The title signaled universal rule. More importantly, it marked political unification under one supreme leader. This was not just a new crown. It was a new structure. Genghis reorganized people and armies to weaken old tribal division. He used a decimal military system. Units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 mattered. That helped cut across older loyalties. It created discipline. It created mobility. It created cohesion in war. The first big targets were nearby powers. Xixia was one. The Yuan Dynasty in North China was another. These campaigns taught the Mongols to adapt. People often remember only horse archers on open plains. That picture is incomplete. The Mongols learned siege warfare too. They absorbed engineers from conquered peoples. They used intelligence networks. They studied routes and weaknesses. They did not stay simple raiders. They became sophisticated empire builders of war. Their military edge came from several layers at once. They moved fast. Their cavalry was disciplined. Their composite bows were deadly. They used scouts well. They used feigned retreat well. That tactic lured enemies into disorder. Then came one of the most famous campaigns of all. The attack on the Khwarezmian Empire began in 1219. The trigger came from a breakdown in diplomacy and commerce. The response was devastating. Cities like Bukhara and Samarkand fell. The campaign became a symbol of Mongol retribution. It also opened routes farther west. Resistance could bring total destruction. That lesson traveled faster than armies did. Psychological warfare became one of the empire's strongest tools. Surrender could mean lighter treatment. Resistance could mean exemplary annihilation. Fear became a weapon before arrows even landed. Genghis Khan died in 1227. He died during or near the final Xixia phase. But the empire did not stop expanding with his death. Succession moved through the ruling family. That preserved continuity. It also planted future conflict. Ogedei Khan became Great Khan. Under Ogedei, expansion continued hard. The Yuan Dynasty was finally destroyed in 1234. Mongol armies also moved into the Rus principalities. Then they pushed into Europe. In the late 1230s and early 1240s, the shock was immense. Kievan Rus was devastated. European forces were defeated in Poland and Hungary. For a moment, it seemed the Mongols might keep rolling west. Then succession politics intervened. Ogedei died. Leaders were pulled back by imperial politics. Historians still debate how far the Mongols would have gone otherwise. After Ogedei, internal politics grew more tangled. Regencies mattered. Family branches competed. Faction fights deepened. Yet the empire kept moving outward. Under Mongol Khan, expansion continued again. Two of his brothers became central figures. Kublai pushed in East Asia. Hulagu pushed in the Islamic world. Hulaga's campaign reached one of the medieval world's great centers. Baghdad fell in 1258. That event shattered the Abbasid Caliphate's political centrality. It also became one of the empire's darkest symbols. Loss of life was vast. Institutions were damaged. Urban systems were disrupted. Irrigation decline in some regions had lasting consequences. Not every Mongol campaign succeeded. That point matters too. In 1260, Mongol forces were defeated at Ain Jalut. The Mamluks stopped further expansion into Egypt. This defeat did not destroy Mongol power, but it showed limits. No empire stays unstoppable forever. Now we turn to Kublai Khan. He became the most famous later ruler in many popular histories. Kublai consolidated power over China. In 1271, he proclaimed the Yuan Dynasty. By 1279, the southern Song had fallen. That brought all of China under Mongol rule. This was a huge transformation. Kublai ruled from a more sedentary imperial center. Administration became even more important. Court culture expanded. Infrastructure mattered more. The empire was still Mongol, but it was also changing shape. One of the empire's greatest non-military effects was the Pax Mongolica. Across large stretches of Eurasia, routes became more secure. Trade along the Silk Road benefited. Merchants traveled farther. Envoys traveled farther. Monks, artisans, and scholars traveled farther too. The Mongols supported relay stations called the Yam system. Authority tablets, often called peza, helped movement and control. Communication sped up. Goods moved faster. Ideas moved faster. So did artistic styles. So did technologies. And yes, so did disease. Administration is often underestimated in Mongol history. The empire used conquered talent pragmatically. Persian administrators mattered. Chinese officials mattered. Uyghur scribes mattered. Engineers from many regions mattered. The empire cared about utility and order. Religious tolerance also appeared in many phases. Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, and others could live under Mongol rule. That tolerance was never identical everywhere. Politics could override it. But compared with many assumptions, the empire was not culturally simple. The legal tradition linked to Genghis is often called the Yasa, but historians warn against treating it like a neat surviving codebook. Its exact contents are hard to reconstruct. That detail matters because popular history often oversimplifies it. The human cost of Mongol conquest remains enormous. Some modern estimates run into the tens of millions. Exact numbers are debated heavily. Medieval counting was not precise. What is not debated is the scale of trauma. Massacre happened. Siege famine happened. Displacement happened. Infrastructure collapse happened. Whole urban worlds changed. The empire also helped shape disease pathways. Greater Eurasian connection increased movement across long distances. That mattered for commerce. It also mattered for pathogens. Exchange never moves only silk and silver. Eventually, the empire fragmented. Distance mattered. Succession disputes mattered. Regional interests mattered. By the later 13th century, the unified empire was splitting into major khanates. The Yuan ruled China. The Ilkhanate ruled Persia and nearby lands. The Chagatai Khanate held much of Central Asia. The Golden Horde dominated the Western Steppe and Rus world. These states still shared Mongol ancestry, but they increasingly pursued separate goals. Sometimes they even fought one another. Decline came through several channels at once. Succession conflict returned again and again. Fiscal pressure grew. Local elites regained power. Disease and rebellion hurt stability. In China, the Yuan fell to the Ming in 1368. The Ilkhanate fragmented in the 14th century. The Golden Horde weakened through conflict and outside pressure. Chagatai lands split and reformed. By the late 14th century, the unified empire was long gone. Its legacy stayed double-edged. On one side, ruthless conquest, massacre, and destruction. On the other, unprecedented overland connection across Eurasia. The Mongol Empire did not simply destroy the medieval world. It connected it, shocked it, and changed its direction. If you want the next chapter, watch the video on how the Silk Road changed after the Mongols. That story shows what happened after conquest turned into connection. A few deeper points make the empire easier to understand. First, Mongol success was logistical, not just emotional. Steppe mobility gave armies endurance. Horses allowed speed. Mobile herds supported long movement. Discipline let that speed become coordinated force. Second, conquest was paired with learning. When the Mongols met walls, they learned siegecraft. When they met new states, they absorbed specialists. That adaptability is one reason they kept expanding. Third, fear saved them work. A city that had heard what happened elsewhere might surrender faster. That meant reputation could reduce resistance before battle even started. But empire is not only war. The Mongols also had to govern people who farmed, traded, wrote, and taxed. That required a different kind of skill. Across Eurasia, they stitched together a political zone larger than almost anyone imagined. In some places that brought fresh exchange. Paper moved. Techniques moved. Art motifs moved. Knowledge moved. Travelers, such as envoys and merchants, crossed wider worlds than before. This is why the empire's legacy feels so mixed. The same system that spread terror also spread connection. The same roads that carried soldiers also carried trade. The same order that protected merchants could follow massacre. That moral contradiction sits at the center of Mongol history. Look again at Kublai's world in China. Rule over a vast, sedentary population changed Mongol politics. Court life expanded. Bureaucratic needs expanded. Taxation became more complicated. This was not the same political environment as the earlier steppe confederation. Success made the empire heavier. Heavier systems are harder to keep unified. That helps explain fragmentation. The empire was too large, too varied, and too dynastic to remain fully one forever. Regional rulers developed their own priorities. Distance made direct control slower. Family disputes kept reopening the question of who held supreme legitimacy. By then, being a Mongol ruler in China was not the same as being one in Persia, nor was it the same as ruling the western steppe. Different societies pulled Mongol rule in different directions. Even the empire's memory changed by region. In some places, the Mongols were remembered mainly as destroyers. In others, they were remembered as political founders or commercial connectors. Both memories contain truth. That is why the empire still fascinates historians. It was brutal enough to traumatize continents. It was connected enough to transform them. The easiest mistake is treating the Mongols as only one thing. They were not only horse raiders. They were not only city destroyers. They were not only tolerant pragmatists. They were a world-changing imperial system with several faces at once. And that is why, centuries later, the Mongol Empire still feels enormous. Not just in size, in consequence. If you want the next deep dive, watch the video on Genghis Khan himself. That story shows how one man emerged from steppe chaos and changed Eurasia forever.